We might kick off. We've got 59 people, so welcome design thinkers. It's fantastic to see you all. And I'm not sure whether everyone is in Sydney tonight, but Sydney is Gadigal land, and so I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. They are the traditional custodians of the land, and so we'd like to pay our respects to them tonight and to their elders, both past and present. So we've got a few proceedings before we launch into our main speaker tonight, Poppy, who Ben will introduce in a second. But first, I think we can all agree we find ourselves in pretty unusual times at the moment. And so Zoe is just going to give some of her reflections on what we've all been experiencing over the last few months, and most recently with the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that I speak like on behalf of the design thinking group, so those guys can correct me if they do object to something I say. But it is a crazy world that we're living in at the moment. I don't think anyone would have remotely predicted anything which has gone on for 2020, and the fact that we're all, like doing this session remotely, design thinking remotely, is new for us. And for most of us, working remotely, being isolated, like that's a really big challenge. And there's different, tensions that bring on to our well-being and our mental health and the way it is that we're performing. Not mentioning the fact that there's a lot of people who, are struggling, like they've lost their jobs, or they're searching for different opportunities or different pathways or openings. It's also super interesting, like around the world, with like finally seeing and these protests happening for Black Lives Matter. And as a community, like this is a great opportunity to listen and to stop and to really listen, because I think, if you're in a privileged position, it's really easy to forget or ignore or dismiss, the struggles that people are having, because they're people who happen to have, more melatonin like running through their system, and they're Black. Like that shouldn't be a punishment in itself. And it's for us to now really listen and see, one, that there is change. It does seem to be happening. It does seem to, it does appear like there's, some momentum now, but enable that and encourage that and listen to what the people around us are saying, what those different communities are saying, and really respect that and see what we can do to help and support and enable. But it's encouraging, and it's encouraging at this time to see support globally.
Yeah, there's been amazing display of solidarity around the world. It's quite incredible.
Yes.
Just a reminder for everyone, perhaps some of you might be new to Zoom. You can post your questions or comment or have discussions in the chat. And we'll be keeping an eye on the chat. So you can find the chat down in the bottom of the menu bar. And there's already a bit of discussion there. I'm glad some of you have wine and cheese tonight. Cheese is always good.
Just also one thing you'll notice too, there's a link to a mural board, live mural board, so you can jump as an anonymous person, and there's a question section there as well. So people can write sticky notes, and if we do some breakout stuff, you can always try and find some space there as well, and maybe write some sticky notes as well to collaborate if you need to.
So has everyone found the chat? I'm sure everyone's Zoom veteran.
Yeah, so just very quickly too, so they're also in the mural board, we'll start putting the links. So every breakout will have its own Zoom link, so you can choose which breakout you want to go to. So we'll have 3 breakouts today. So there'll be me running Building Resilience. Sam Ezra is going to be doing a session on behavioural economics. And Ben's going to run a general networking event. So we'll put the links to the Zoom calls when we get closer to that event. And you'll be able to jump onto those calls, so you can decide to drop in and drop out as much as you want. It's a bit better than the Zoom forced locations from a breakout perspective.
Okay, and
So I'm coming over to the main stage. Where am I? Yo! So, quick intro to Poppy, who's our speaker tonight. Unfortunately, Shelley couldn't make it at the last minute, but we're still lucky to have Poppy, and it means everyone will be able to do the exercise that she was going to do in a breakout room, which is pretty awesome. So Poppy Rouse is a strategic design principal at Dynamic 4, which means I have the good fortune of working with her all the time, which is great fun. She's a design thinking practitioner, passionate about unleashing potential in the clients she works with, and she has a long career in international marketing, or in marketing internationally, comms capability, done a whole bunch of awesome stuff, strong focus on purpose-driven social enterprise work, and she's going to talk to us about a whole bunch of things around growth mindset. So over to Poppy.
Thanks, Ben. Can everyone hear me okay? Yep, great, awesome. I'm just gonna, oh, sorry, 1 second. I'm just trying to share my screen with you guys. And can everyone see that? Yeah, great, okay. So as Ben mentioned, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about a sort of side passion of mine, has been for the last few years, and that's around growth mindset. So I know that we were going to talk about neuroscience today, and I will touch on that, but I'm not a neuroscientist like Shelley, so unfortunately I can't go into too much detail. But hopefully what that means is that I'm going to do my best to translate to you what I've learned in all my nerding out over the last few years with growth mindset. So a little bit about me and how I got into this, this rabbit hole of understanding mindset. So I used to work in the innovation lab at Commonwealth Bank, and one of our remits during that time was to build innovation capability across the whole bank. And the bank decided that design thinking was going to be one of the key tools or processes that we used to drive innovation, or that they used to drive innovation. And so we created a whole bunch of courses and capability sessions, and ran every sort of innovation competition under the sun, trying to encourage more people to learn design thinking. And we, after about 6 months or so, we started to come up against this frustration, because we would teach all of these people these awesome tools, and then none of them would be using them. And we couldn't figure it out. You know, we were all super excited about it. We thought, you know, this is going to be the future of the bank and the way it works, and everyone can apply it in every role. It doesn't matter what they're doing. You know, everyone's a problem solver, right? So we'll be able to use this. It's going to be, you know, a key competitive advantage. And we just couldn't figure out why people weren't applying what we'd taught them. And as we kind of dug into it, we really started to realize, you know, learning is uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable. I'm sure everyone's who's worked in design thinking knows these sort of images, because they resonate so much. Also, failure is uncomfortable. And if you think about the design thinking process, so much of it is around learning, it's around change, it's around failure. And so, you know, we wanted to dive in deeper and understand what was going on for people and why it was struggling. And one of my colleagues came across this book by Professor Carol Dweck. So hopefully I can see a few people nodding. Carol Dweck's an incredible woman. She's done a huge amount of research into the psychology around, on her book it says success, but it's really around learning, and why some people are really open to trying new things and getting excited about them, and putting in the effort, while some people aren't. And for her, it came down to this theory of mindset, which is essentially your belief or attitudes which drive the way that you think, feel, and act. And mindset theory is based off the science of neuroplasticity. Until recently, and I'll show you a quick video that explains it better than I can, but until recently, scientists believed that you were sort of born with a certain brain and it didn't really change over time. And so that really filtered into the way that we learned at school. You know, a lot of people were either really naturally talented at something or you weren't. And so you were encouraged to focus on the things that you were naturally talented at. And I don't know about you guys, but that was certainly the experience that I had when I was at school. And so when I discovered and started reading more about neuroplasticity, it kind of blew my mind, because it was this realization that actually, if you can push through that discomfort and push through with that hard work, anything is really possible. So I'm just going to show you this video and hopefully it works.
Not so long ago, many scientists believed that the brain did not change after childhood, that it was hardwired and fixed by the time we became adults. But recent advances in only the last decade now tell us that this is simply not true. The brain can and does change throughout our lives. It is adaptable, like plastic. Hence, neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity. How does neuroplasticity work? If you think of your brain as a dynamic, connected power grid, there are billions of pathways or roads lighting up every time you think, feel, or do something. Some of these roads are well-traveled. These are our habits, our established ways of thinking, feeling, and doing. Every time we think in a certain way, practice a particular task, or feel a specific emotion, we strengthen this road. It becomes easier for our brains to travel this pathway. Say we think about something differently, learn a new task, or choose a different emotion. We start carving out a new road. If we keep traveling that road, our brains begin to use this pathway more, and this new way of thinking, feeling, or doing becomes second nature. The old pathway gets used less and weakens. This process of rewiring your brain by forming new connections and weakening old ones is neuroplasticity in action. The good news is that we all have the ability to learn and change by rewiring our brains. If you have ever changed a bad habit or thought about something differently, you have carved a new pathway in your brain and experienced neuroplasticity firsthand. With repeated and directed attention towards your desired change, you can rewire your brain.
All right, so this discovery, as I said, is really what Carol Dweck based a lot of her research off. And I apologize if this image isn't very clear, but essentially what she uncovered when she was researching the reason why people are more likely to learn and embrace learning as opposed to giving up easily is the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. So if you have a fixed mindset, you might see failure as just the limit of your abilities. You might give up on things easily and get frustrated. You might not like to be challenged on things. You might stick to what you know. You might take on feedback really badly and get quite defensive. Whereas with a growth mindset, you see failure as an opportunity to grow, and you look at the challenges as opportunities to grow as well. And you're probably more likely to try new things. You see feedback as constructive, and you kind of see effort as that's what you need to do if you're going to try something new. It's going to be hard. And if you think about the entrepreneurial roller coaster that you go on whenever you're trying something new, or setting up a new business, or designing a new product or service, actually, growth mindset is essential for all of us as design thinkers. And it was this realization that really helped us to uncover why it was that so many people in our organization weren't picking up the tools that we were trying to teach them. And so we went and did some more research and tried to understand, what can we do about this? and how can we encourage more people to access their growth mindset and move away from fixed mindset and fixed behaviors that you so often see in large organizations. And what it came down to when we spoke to, we actually worked with Susan Mackey, Dr. Susan Mackey, who's the sort of right-hand woman of Carol Dweck here in Australia. And she helped us understand that really a lot of it is about awareness and having the understanding that you either have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset about certain things, and then being able to shift from that. And neuroscientists call this this process of neuroplasticity in action, as you would say. They call it metacognition, which is really the awareness of what thoughts and actions are going on for you at any certain time. So really, as I said, it's the trick is to acknowledge when you're getting set off. And what happens when you're triggered by certain things is that it sets off the hippocampus in your brain, which is essentially your fight or flight sort of facility in your brain. So instead, we need to create this mindfulness and understand what's going on and see that we're being triggered into this autopilot response. And then we can start shifting, as it showed in the video, and start creating new neural pathways in our brain. So this was just a really brilliant opportunity for us to go, okay, well, how do we do that? How do we help people understand that? And so we did. We spoke to Carol Dweck, and we were talking about what triggers people typically. And it's really interesting because everyone gets triggered by something, right? We all have the bad behaviors that we don't want to admit to, but they come up. And they come up in our personal lives, they come up in our business lives as well, in our work and professional environments. And I imagine so many people have been triggered by what's been going on for us all over the last few months in particular. But these are some of the 6 triggers that are typically quite common for a lot of people. So number 1 is skills. So you might believe that you're born with with raw talent, or you're not. Whereas if you have a growth mindset, you're going to believe that it comes from that hard work and you can always improve. Challenges. So if you see a challenge, you might try and avoid it. You might try and give up quite easily. You might give up quite easily because it might reveal a lack of skills. You might see effort as unnecessary, and it's just proof that you're not good at what you do. You might take on feedback really badly and take it personally. You might look at setbacks as something that you get discouraged by, and you might blame others. And this is a really interesting one, the last one, because no one likes to admit that this is them. But so many of us get triggered by the success of others, and we get set off and start sort of worried about what does that mean for me? And that shows that I'm not necessarily good at my job and whatever else it might be. When actually, if we move into that growth mindset, all of these things should be embraced as ways that we can learn and improve ourselves and improve our product or service that we're designing. So once you've understood what triggers you, you can then start to look at what emotions are triggered by that. So how do you feel when that trigger sets you off? And I know I'm getting a little bit woo-woo here, but this was a revelation to me that there are even more emotions than happy and sad, because as a Brit, we don't talk about our feelings at all. But you can see here that there are actually a lot of feelings, hundreds of them. And being able to identify them and name them helps us to, with that being aware of our feelings. And this is essentially the practice of mindfulness. I'm sure lots of you already are across mindfulness and the importance of being able to just sit and observe what thoughts and feelings are going past as opposed to holding on to them. And this is a really important next step. And then from there, you can look at, okay, well, what are the destructive behaviors that I am, that are happening as a result of these triggers? So again, having this awareness of what's actually, how are you behaving, and being really honest with yourself is really important. So do you get defensive? Do you catastrophize? Do you just give up, or are you blaming others and complaining about you know, all the other things that are going on, as opposed to really taking the opportunity to learn and grow from whatever it is that's going on for you. So something that we started doing in our team is we actually started creating personas for our fixed mindset, because what we liked about that is that it helped us separate from that behavior and separate ourselves from that. And it allowed us to really take a step back and observe what was going on. And so this is what I'm going to get you guys to do in a second, is to think about what triggers you, what emotions come up as a result of that situation or trigger, and how do you behave as a result. And then we're going to name our fixed mindset. So I'm going to give you an example. And I can't believe I'm doing this in front of like 60 or maybe more people, but this is my fixed mindset. So, hi, my name is Poppy. My fixed mindset shows up when I get negative feedback on my work, especially when it's given with no guidance on how I can improve it. I actually start to feel really overwhelmed, and I start to become quite withdrawn. So I kind of go into the complete opposite of who I am as a normal, fairly outgoing person. I basically go into flight mode and I start planning my move back to England. I'm going to become a librarian and live with my parents, and probably never going to see the light of day ever again. So my fixed mindset is called Withdrawn Wendy. And I have checked with my friend who I used to work with, and he's happy for me to share his as well in case you need a little bit of inspiration. But he was... his fixed mindset was catastrophic Colin. So whenever we would come up against an obstacle or some sort of setback, he would just go into a complete tiz, and he would come into the lab and he'd throw everything up in the air and start basically saying that the world was going to end and we were never going to be able to deliver whatever project it was or whatever. But we would call him catastrophic Colin. And what's really useful about doing this, like I said, it helps you separate from itself. But if you can then share that with your teammates or perhaps even your families at home, you start to help people become aware of what's coming up for you and how you're feeling. But you can also then have a team with you that will help you to start to shift that behavior. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do now is to have a look at these triggers and just grab a pen and paper or a Post-it note, or you can write it down on your phones if you want, but just have a really honest conversation with yourself and just write down what it is that triggers your fixed mindset.
Sorry, we have no elevator music to play. Ben's just singing The Girl from Ipanema. Perhaps I'll on mute.
All right, so now that we've got our triggers, hopefully, now we're going to look at our emotions. So what emotions and feelings come up for you when you're triggered? And I'm putting the wheel up for you because if you're anything like me, you might need some help here.
Can there be more than one, Poppy?
Yes, absolutely.
É a coisa mais linda que eu já vi passar. Porque estou tão sozinho. Porque.
All right, and then lastly, we're going to get into the behaviors, and there's just a handful here, but this is obviously very personal. So just have a think about how do you react in that moment when you're triggered. All right, so hopefully everyone has a bit of a start to their sort of script, I guess. So the last thing to do is to create your fixed mindset persona, and feel free to get as creative as you like with this. You don't have to use alliteration. It's just something we randomly decided to do. But I'll give you another minute to just write this down as your script and name yourselves. Okay, before we go full on Rio style. Hopefully everyone has a bit of a script now. What we're going to do is jump into a very quick breakout room, and what I would love you to do is to share or introduce your fixed mindsets to the other people in your breakout room. And we're going to give you about 5 or 6 minutes to do that. So hopefully the guys at Fishburners will be able to do that.
Yes, we're about to do that through the incredible powers of technology. We are going to randomly assign people into groups of 4, Poppy? Is it 4 or?
Yeah, if that's possible.
Okay, so to do this incredible feat, I need some mathematics. So 71 people divided by 4 equals 17 breakout rooms. So let's see if I can make this work. So 17.
For about 5 minutes or so.
Actually, I'll make it 16 because that will be 4 to 5 participants in a room. So we're going to give ourselves 5 minutes, folks. So I'm creating the breakout rooms now. Hopefully this works. Fingers crossed. Okay, folks, we're just waiting for the last people to join after those breakout rooms. So we'll just give it another minute. Did the technology work?
It worked for me.
We actually had some new joiners after I did the breakout room, so apologies for the people who found themselves in an abyss with no breakout. I'm terribly sorry, but for those who were in breakout rooms, I hope that was productive, and I'll pass over to Polly.
Thank you. So hopefully you guys all got super vulnerable and it wasn't too awkward sharing your fixed mindset with total strangers. I had a lovely chat with Eva. So thank you, Eva. And I guess, the next step is to once you've understood what your fixed mindset is and what the triggers are and how you're behaving, it's then to practice the awareness around when that comes up for you. So it's amazing how as soon as you start that metacognition of actually being aware of what's coming up for you at any given time, it starts to become something that you notice more and more. And so you can start practicing being aware of that, but then also shifting into trying to shift into more of a growth mindset. So Dweck, when she talks about this in her book, she talks about having like a coach almost that if she's having an argument perhaps with her husband or, something's coming up for her, she can bring in her growth mindset coach. So you might give them a name as well. But then the thing to do is to kind of think about, okay, well, instead, when I'm getting these thoughts and emotions and actions coming up for me, how can I shift into a growth mindset? What would my growth mindset persona say to my fixed mindset? So instead of saying something like, I'm not good at this, you might say, what am I missing? Or, that thought of, I'll never be that smart. Actually, I can learn how to do this. Or that feedback was really bad. I should just give up. Actually, what can I learn from that and take forward, not just for this project, but for future project or experience, but for future projects or experience as well. So here are some ideas around, what a growth mindset might look like. And what you can do now is create your own little mindset mentor. So for example, whenever I get negative feedback now and I'm feeling overwhelmed, I acknowledge that that's my fixed mindset showing up. And instead of kind of withdrawing from the world and planning my escape back to the UK, I try to practice looking at it differently and kind of going, okay, well, what can I learn from this? And really taking it on as a learning opportunity and an opportunity for growth. So I might get you guys to quickly have a think about that just for another minute and just think about looking at these things. What are the things that you could ask yourself next time your fixed mindset comes up? And write that down. All right, hopefully everyone's had a chance to take some of those ideas. And you can think about creating your growth mindset mentor, whatever you want to give them a name, Fair Game Frank, or I don't know, my brain's not even working anymore. But have a think about what your growth mindset mentor might be called, and you can call on them next time you see your fixed mindset come up. Now, I just want to end with a reminder that this stuff takes practice. You know, you might want to share it with the people closest to you that you feel safe with, so that they can help you identify when you're behaving in those patterns, when you're in autopilot or fight or flight mode, and help you to remind you to kind of shift into that growth mindset. And like I said, we did this with our teams at CBA as a way of building relationships and a really great team culture, but also helping each other out and creating that safe space to call yourselves out when you're perhaps behaving not as you'd wish to. You could create a safe word if you don't want to call each other's fixed mindset personas out. But it does take practice. If you think about that brain in the video at the beginning, creating those new neural pathways, the more you practice this, the more you think about what you're thinking and how you're acting and start to shift that behavior, it will become easier over time. And, you know, I think as a result, we can all become better design thinkers. We can become better humans, really, to ourselves and to others by taking that opportunity for growth whenever we can. So just to wrap up, if you want to learn more, there is a great TED Talk by Carol Dweck on the power of believing that you can improve or you can learn. And she has a book as well, Mindset, which really dives into it a bit more. It can be a little bit dry at times, but it's well worth the read. There are a couple of other great books like Grit, and Eva and I were just talking about Thinking Fast and Slow. But tons of podcasts, so much research out there. So if this speaks to you and you want to learn more about it, I highly recommend, especially now you're all in your growth mindset, so you're probably ready to learn as much as you can. I do encourage you guys to check that out and keep talking about it with your friends and family as well. So thank you all so much for listening to me, and I'm going to hand back over to Kate and Ben to run the rest of the session.
Thank you, Poppy.
We need to clap.
That was a really fun session. I feel that we got to know people on the call a little bit better. So thank you so much for providing a safe space to do that. And Lucas now has the next activity. So
yeah, so we're going to open up to a Q&A. So I don't know if anyone has any questions for Poppy. I mean, we can open up a free-for-all. There's not many questions on the mural board, but I don't know if anyone wants to put their hand up and ask any questions.
Would you like to just explain the mural board in case people?
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. So I might maybe I'll reshare the link so people can jump on the board again.
Have people used Mural before?
That's a good point.
I've been using it a lot, and I found it an amazing collaboration tool. It's kind of like virtual Post-it notes. it's pretty easy to use.
And Sam's left an awesome blurb for her breakout session too.
Yeah. I can't actually, my mural board is updating changes, so I can't actually get the link at the moment, unfortunately. Actually, Ben, do you mind going through the chat and finding the link I sent at the beginning? Just repost that.
Okay, I got it.
You got it?
Yep.
Yeah, I got
Just
it.
repost that, just so people can jump on the board. There's about 20 or 30 people on the board at the moment. You just double click to place a post-it note.
Zoe's reposted.
So Zoe's sent the link in the chat. And we can see some people are using it.
Yeah, so what I might suggest is if you've got a question, just put your name and just the rough area of the question, and we'll open up to you, and then you can just go on unmute and you can actually ask your question. We just don't want to open up and have a million people talking at once.
If for any reason you can't access the mural board, then there's also just our chat in Zoom.
Yeah, so Arby, I think Arby has a question for Poppy. So Arby, maybe do you want to ask your question?
Thanks, Poppy. Thank you very much for the session. Very intriguing and extremely eye-opening. And now, and this is one of my weak spots. So thank you very much again for, educating me in this. Quick question, Poppy, there's a cost engine in the background, right, in the organization. Now, should there be a domain or phase where the growth mindset should be replaced by fixed mindset in order to deliver value proposition to the customers? And on my breakout session, I did have a discussion with Mike on this, but it was very short notice and short timing over there, so we couldn't discuss it further. But because if we always have a growth mindset, we won't be able to deliver anything. We'll always be innovating and we'll always be moving a different tangent, etc. So shouldn't we replace sometime, a phase whereby we replace our mindset to a fixed mindset?
That's an interesting one. It's a great way of thinking about it, and a great question. I think growth mindset doesn't necessarily mean that we're always innovating. It means more that we're learning as we go, and if we're coming up against setbacks or difficulties, we're taking those on as learning opportunities, and we're growing as a result. But that doesn't mean that we're just being creative, or we're just coming up with ideas or trying new things all the time, because I totally agree, we'd never get anything done. It's more that as we're delivering on whatever it is that we're delivering, we're taking the time to learn and reflect as a result. So does that answer the question?
It does, because what happened was I was there in a retrospective, and the person was completely changing he was very fickle-minded. So I told him, I said, we've got to have some certainty. I'm not asking you not to have growth mindset. He said, look, if I'm coming up with new ideas, then I should be encouraged. So I said, I am encouraging you, but then again, we've got a specific time span to implement something.
Right. I see what you mean. Yeah. I think, I think that becomes a leadership question of how you manage how you manage those people effectively, because obviously when you're creating a culture of innovation, you do want to make sure that people feel heard and that their ideas are being taken on board, but at the same time you want to make sure that you're delivering on whatever your project is, and also aligning to your purpose, because I think a lot of people can kind of get lost in that, and I think that's where setting setting boundaries, setting principles, setting key goals and a core purpose that you're working towards at the beginning, and then reminding people through that. And actually it's a shame that Shelley wasn't able to join today, because she did a great session earlier on a lot of how you communicate around those biases and behaviors. So
use the biases and constraints to your advantage. And, no, thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Question.
Just
sorry. Okay, sorry, I've got another question here. I don't have a name, so I'll just read the question out. So, Poppy, how did you go about introducing and fostering the growth mindset within a large enterprise, i.e., sustained culture at scale? Ron, thanks, Ron.
Oh, that's a journey that I don't think necessarily ends. I think it's really important to start with your leaders, and having leaders who are open to change, open to being courageous, open to being bold and trying something new, and setting that mindset almost as a theme for the organization. So at CBA, we actually spent a lot of time, we kind of ran some experiments to see, to show that it actually made a difference to the work that we were doing. And then we took that to the leadership team and we worked with them to then be able to roll it out across the broader areas of the organization. So it's a long process, and I think especially in any large organization, if you're trying to drive change, it's going to take time, and you need to look at the leadership, the culture, the processes and operating model that you're setting up. It's not something that necessarily is going to happen overnight. It can take years. But I think like that the proof is in the pudding when you actually see people go on that journey. And I think growth mindset's something that you could introduce when you're teaching anything new, because learning, as I said, change is uncomfortable. So, it's something that we can all learn from. And what's really cool is they're teaching this in schools now to kids, and it's completely changing the way that those kids are kind of learning and growing as well. So it'll be interesting to see when this new generation comes through, how cultures change as a result.
So we've got a question in the chat forum from Sam. Sam, did you want to ask your question?
Sure. Poppy, I was just going to ask you about, ways you might have come up with, or any advice you have around encouraging people to see that fixed mindset in themselves. Obviously, when we find people that are very fixed, they're not necessarily in a space where they're very open to being super self-aware. So any thoughts you've had?
I mean, that's a really hard one, right? Because you can't change anyone, you can only change yourself. And so I think then it becomes a matter of how you take the time to empathize and understand where that person's coming from and what might perhaps be coming up for them. And I think also, part of the way that I do that, have done that in the past, is also by creating a safe space for them to go on that journey, which often involves me having to be vulnerable and kind of lay my cards out on the table as well and be really open and honest about that. So I think, probably don't have the best answer for you, but I think, like I said, the main thing you can do is change you and change yourself in the way that you react in those situations and how you can seek to understand, and then create the safe space for them to go on that journey as well. It's not necessarily going to happen with everyone, unfortunately.
Love it. Thank you.
I think the key thing you called out there, Poppy, was that you can only control yourself. That's, I always love the term responsibility. You have the ability to respond.
That's so right. Yeah, I love that too.
Okay, so I think James has got a question. Maybe James, you want to ask your question? Is it James Linton?
Is it possible?
Yeah, actually, I was giving an answer to. Often people don't realise we learn by building a wall of learning or knowledge or whatever, that we have existing ideas, and a lot of our existing ideas are fine, but we need to build on the existing ideas. So when talking to someone with a fixed attitude, if you can say that you're trying to add to their knowledge. It doesn't discount what they already know, and often results in less emotional resistance.
That's such a great point, James. And I think we can all, like, we're just as bad if we don't seek to understand the difference of perspective. You know, if we're just trying to go in and say, you know, you have to have a growth mindset, that's not the way this works at all. And that would be just as bad, I think. So seeking to understand different perspectives and learn from each other and grow. And it might be that, you know, the reason why we're trying to encourage a growth mindset might actually have some selfish sort of
we might have the wrong attitude.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think that's one of the risks around this, actually, that I've spoken with Susan Mackey about in the past, is if people don't take the time to really understand growth and fixed mindset theory and just go out and start preaching it willy-nilly, it can actually end up having detrimental results when people kind of start pointing fingers and going, you have a fixed mindset. That's not what this is about at all. It's about it's really about seeking to understand and seeking to, like,
the irony of someone saying someone has a fixed mindset has its own fixed mindset connotation.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I think Harshita has a question.
Yes, thank you for that session. I think it was very candid and raw, and thanks for being vulnerable and sharing your experiences. Thanks, Poppy. My question is, like, regarding this kind of fixed mindset and the growth mindset, what level of the hierarchy in an organization that they should be aware of this one, about the fixed mindset and the growth mindset? Sometimes I feel like I would say that business analysts, the scrum masters, and those ones are the ones who attend these kind of events, they read books, they watch videos, and they're aware of the fixed mindset and the growth mindset attitude, and they will be acting in that way. But I feel like someone who's a director or an exec, they might not fully get this understanding of this concept of, though they're supportive of this one, they might not be at the mindset of implementing this with an organization level. So what would you feel like, at what level of the organization in the hierarchy that they should be aware of this fixed mindset and the growth mindset?
I mean, I believe that all leaders, I think every single person can benefit from understanding the difference between a fixed and growth mindset. And I think if you're trying to roll it out within an organization, if you don't have the backing from really senior leaders, then it's going to be hard for you to especially depending on the scale of the organization, it's going to be really difficult if you don't have those most senior leaders on board. But I think there are some really good ways that you can kind of frame that based off what they're interested in. And I think the way that I read something recently that I think it was from Professor Case Dorst at UTS, was talking about how the winning organizations in the market are going to be the ones who are the fastest learners. And if you think about the need to have a growth mindset to take on these learnings, that's going to be essential. It's going to be your best competitive advantage. So I don't know if that answers your question. But what's really interesting is, even if you can run a session like this with your senior leaders and they go through the process, they then see the benefits of it as well, because they see it within themselves. And I've had like CEOs be like, oh, can you come and do this at home with my family? It's, you can usually see the benefit quite quickly.
Yeah, in my experience, I've seen it's quite a challenge to practice it with the leadership level. We do have run some of the sessions and understanding like where we need to change and everything, but keeping that momentum throughout the year, it's quite a challenging this one. Sometimes it's I do I used to believe that it has to come from the top to bottom approach, that they need to be the believers. Sometimes I feel like the motivation is lost at the middle level and the lower level of the hierarchy. So it's quite messy that where exactly it needs to be, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, just for context, like when at CBA we had like 24 different innovation culture programs running at any one time, just because you're not going to win everyone over with one single program of work. You have to meet people on their journey, and that could be anywhere. So it's not something, unfortunately, that you can force people to do either. Like, you have to really take them on that journey and make them feel part of it and show that ownership as well. Does anyone else? I feel like there are loads of amazing people on this call. Like, I'm sure there are people here who have much better insights than I do.
Well, I think Catherine Wiggett's got a question for you, Poppy.
Hello, yes I do. Sorry, thank you. Yeah, it's probably it's a question we get a lot as well. When it's information I'm trying to gather, obviously, with everything that's happened has changed a lot of things, or there's that fear that it's changed a lot of things as well. So what I wanted to ask is, as we've had to now move to doing a lot of things remotely, virtual, and digitized our workflow, which I think is a lot of positives, but there's also, I suppose, when you're trying to create these intangible things or drive this change with people, what adaptation or what sort of changes have you made with your process to try and shift these mindsets in a digital or virtual environment? And then also, have there been, because my assumption is that it's more challenging, but have there been some things that have actually, because it's now, if you're running a virtual workshop or you're doing it remotely, it's actually helped at all?
Sorry, do you mean when we're running workshops on growth mindset?
Yeah, so I think so. So when you're going through the process that we've done, done it, I suppose just where it's maybe what you've had to change and still get the results, or to try to, or maybe where if it has helped at all in certain situations.
Yeah, it's such a good question, and this is the same for all of our workshops, right? It's like suddenly we've had to move everything online, and it's how do you maintain that connection with people, especially in like longer sessions like this where we're really trying to drive behavioral change. And I found things like doing the breakout rooms really helpful in a way, because it like forces people to have conversations and to still stay engaged throughout, as opposed to just kind of putting something on and then having it listening in the background. Although I'm sure people are doing that as well. But at the same time, it makes it really difficult, because if you've got a really large group on a call, it makes it hard to have these types of conversations. I think there are also some great benefits to this way of working, though. Like, it makes it so much more inclusive in our developed world. I do a lot of work with charities in Africa, and that's a completely different story, because they don't even have access to the internet half the time. But in our world, it's incredible the opportunity that it creates, because it means that people can work from anywhere. They can live their lives much more flexibly, all of those things. And I think sometimes having these digital workshops also creates space for people who might speak less. If you've got a smaller workshop, it creates the space for them to ask questions in the chat if they're a bit more shy, or actually have a conversation like this. So I think there are pros and cons, right? But I think we're all still learning as well. We haven't had to do this before. I don't think I would have been asked to run a workshop like this before online.
No. Well, I can relate. So I recruit for the design industry, and I've placed people in jobs in the last 3 months and nobody has met each other.
Yeah.
And that blows my mind. In 20 years of recruitment, and I've done a lot of design freelance, and in the busier times of the year, the only people I have left available can do it remotely, and they're very good. And everyone will be like, oh, no,
yeah,
can't work remotely.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. And I think some of those people got those jobs because there's a really, I mean, I'm sat here with my dog, right? There is a human element that's actually brought to this weird virtual situation. And I've had some people that I think have found it more relaxed. I work with deaf and hard of hearing, and the interview has been with live captioning, and they've done, they've been more confident. And so there's some really interesting stuff, and I can relate. I'm the same. It's like, well, this is new, we'll try this. And then you go, oh, that worked.
Yeah. Or it didn't.
Yeah, or it didn't. Well, never mind, we're okay.
We learn from that. Exactly.
We don't mind failing. We've got a growth mindset, yeah.
Yeah. But isn't it also amazing that it's happened now in a time when we have this amazing technology, like Zoom has just made it so much easier. Because I have a number of clients I'm working with, I've never met them before. And some that I now feel are like my best friends because I speak to them on Zoom all the time.
I agree.
And it's interesting because a few years ago I had this conversation with, I think her name's Dr. Fiona Kerr. She's a neuroscientist, and she talks about leadership and the importance of retina lock when you're meeting people. That creates these new neural pathways that then sort of allows you to build those relationships. And she was sort of saying how you can't replace that over the phone. But I actually feel like it hasn't. I feel like Zoom and FaceTime have really allowed for that still.
The other thing as well, and this will be something, I'll shut up in a minute, sorry, it will probably be a future subject, but as Ben, the guys know, and I've had a few Pinot Noirs now as well, so, but I've had a big issue with the lack of focus on employee experience balanced with customer experience in organizations, and onboarding and the treatment of talent. And what's been very interesting over the last 3 months is for most people we've been working with and what we've seen at Talent where I work, there's been a huge effort and interest and effort on actually looking after people as they come into the process. I do work with the RBA. I've had people working on contract with that. They literally sent a computer, set everything up, all prior to starting. Like, I know we shouldn't be blown away by that, but it was, people that do freelance, they know how many times you've walked in somewhere and nothing's where it should be. And just the amazing the level of care. And I think we've seen some real emphasis of people actually putting their people first. And that's a beautiful thing. And that's something that we haven't always seen, which has happened because of this. And I'm hoping that more people will realise that the importance of how they look after people when they're looking and applying for jobs, and then through that process, just mindful of it, with people sat at home out of work and applying for things, not hearing anything. And I think people are calling people out about it on LinkedIn, which is brilliant. So that's a good thing, I think.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's it, right? It's like, it's the organizations that are looking after their people, they're looking after their customers. Like, this has been such a big opportunity for brands to really step up. And, even from like a social responsibility and sustainability perspective, and that whole like purpose driven movement, this is it. Like, this is when companies are going forward and saying, we're going to give our customers discounts, or I have my energy provider as PowerShop, and they were doing like pay it forward to people who've been affected by bushfires, and the organizations who are really looking after their people at home, like that's it. They're the ones that are going to win in the market now. So it's
simple, right? It's just simple to get back to someone. And I know in my industry, we built it, unfortunately, on the back of people doing it badly. But it's a simple thing just to acknowledge someone, or take a phone call, or email them back. And I think more people are aware of that now, which is good. So I'll let someone else chime in.
Well, I can't see any further questions. Are there any last questions? I think we might try and start the breakouts about 7:30. So any last questions before we sign off from the main talk event? Well, I suppose why don't we give ourselves a break? Maybe everybody jump back on. We'll have on the mural board links to the breakout sessions. We'll also keep this chat open for now, so we'll also post links to the breakout rooms in this forum.
You want Sam to do this is what you're going to chat about?
Yeah, for sure. So look, I'll maybe Sam, maybe let's talk, maybe you go first and talk about what you're going to talk about in your breakout room.
Throw me under the bus, thanks.
I figured I'll give someone else some airtime rather than...
No problem at all. So, Poppy, that was so awesome. Thank you so much. We really enjoyed that conversation. Well done. And you can hear me clapping, actually. So very quickly in my breakout session, I thought we could explore a bit of behavioural economics. I am actually midway through my graduate certificate at UTS, so I don't call myself an expert, but there are some really interesting concepts, I think, to explore when we're talking around mindset, both about awareness of our own mindset, but also in terms of as a designer, how awareness of some of these concepts sort of gives us something kind of powerful. And so I think it'd be quite fun to explore that tension between, you know, where we use that and where it's appropriate for us to use that understanding of people's behaviours and those heuristics or shortcuts in their behaviour when we're designing something. So that's what I would love to chat about.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Sam. So
come join me.
Join me. It's a competition. No, it's not. Look, I'm going to be probably talking about some similar themes to Poppy's and building on from a growth mindset, but focusing a lot on resilience and really looking at that gap between stimulus and response and looking at that as an opportunity where we can look at growth from a coaching perspective and a mentoring perspective. I'll be sharing a lot of my own personal experiences through life, but also sharing some well-known stories and talking about how you can see these things happening in real life, so you can then hopefully apply them to yourselves. And there'll be some time for people to reflect on their own experiences. And I need to thank Poppy for her talk as well. I thought it was great. I actually had a persona already, but I never had a name for it. I actually named the persona.
Amazing. What did you name it?
Disconnecting Dave.
You've got anonymous.
Yes. So if you want to find out if you want to get introduced to Disconnecting Dave, you'll have to hear more about it in my breakout room.
Yeah.
So and I think,
are we going to reconnect at the end of the breakout sessions and come back here and do a bit of a share?
Just 2 breakout rooms.
So yeah, there'll be 2 breakout Zoom links, one for Sam, one for Lucas. So you can leave here, jump on another Zoom link, and also jump back onto this link if you want to rejoin.
Keep this link open.
We're going to leave this
2 groups.
Yeah, so we'll leave this link open, and this will be the just hanging out. I don't know how to join another link, chatting, networking, talking shite room. So, and we'll probably stop recording, so you can speak freely, and we will then let the other hosts of Sam and Lucas know to come back to this room, and you might want to share some key insights or thoughts from the conversation you've been having. So right now, we should share some links.
Yeah.
And you can either stay here or go and talk about resilience or talk about behavioural economics. And it's going to be way more interesting in behavioural economics and resilience than hanging out here.
Just so you're aware too, if you're going to jump on my breakout room, there's 2 links there. One's a mural board, and the second is a Zoom link.
Stop being so organised and making yours look so good, all right? I don't have a mural board. I'm just going to chat.
I was trying to do something interactive. I normally do, and I might even try the breakouts on the fly. Normally, I'd run this session in the room where you break people out and they have conversations. So we'll see how we go. It's going to be an experiment.
Everything's an experiment. We're practicing our growth mindset, just to learn and iterate and go with the flow.
Yeah, and my link's coming. It's just I'm more technically challenged than some. So hold up, it's 2 seconds. It's coming.
And me looking organised is just a ruse because I was putting all the content together literally during this session.
5:30, Lucas. And you will still be able to get back to this link. So if you jump into one of the other rooms and you decide you want to jump into the other one or come back here, you'll be able to move around freely, which is the advantage of doing it this way. rather than chucking them into breakout rooms.